Today on Top Gear Rearview, Jeff's audio quality sounds like crap. Sorry, we don't know how it happened.
Welcome to Top Gear Rearview. Tonight we are talking about the new Top Gear Series 1, Episode 7.
This episode aired on the 1st of December in 2002 with guest Rick Parfitt.
And in an episode that definitely shows they're still figuring out how to style the thing and do segments, we have a test of the Saab 9.3. We have kind of an interesting segment involving diesel cars, electric cars, hybrid cars, and the opinions of children. Jeremy tests the Lotus Elise, and we see who the fastest religious leader is.
Let's talk about a Saab, Jeff.
Man, I mean, I have owned two Saabs that were not actually Saabs. No. And I do not dislike Saab as a brand, but I saw that on the, that's what's on tonight, and I said, what? A 9.3? My mountain biking buddy drives a 9.3. That's just a car.
It's just a regular car.
Just a very safe-ish car.
So there's not going to be much to talk about this car.
No.
The overarching theme of the episode, I guess, has to do with the environment.
Yes.
So they kind of frame everything in relation to this. So the Saab 9.3, the 2.0T comes in at 21,500 pounds. Puts it right into that Renault that we talked about last episode, as well as probably a pretty well-equipped Mondeo kind of price range. Given the option, Jeff, I think I might take the Saab over almost everything else at that price range.
I mean, I don't dislike the Saab. I think they always made good cars, just kitschy enough. The interesting thing about this one, so they said that it does share the chassis with the Vauxhall Vectra. Jesus Christ. And if you recall from a later series, which we'll get to, when it was after Saab's demise, which, spoiler alert, Saab doesn't exist.
I was hoping I could buy one now.
You buy a used one. Cheap. But they were talking about how they were kind of crazy and very sticklers to their principles as a company. And I believe it was actually this car where, this is when GM had a share in them and was saying, we need to, cut costs and you're going to share this chassis. And they were like, yeah, we'll share this chassis. And then kind of ignored them. And more than half the parts in the Vectra and the Saab 9.3 are different, where it was, I think, supposed to be more of a badge engineering exercise.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely the name of the game when it comes to GM, is they bought a struggling Saab for the badge and the name.
For sure.
They said, I guess this is what you're worth. I guess you have a factory and some infrastructure and stuff like that too. But we're buying you because you fit a market that we want to put our cars into. So we are going to give you a car, and then you put that little phoenix head on it and Saab. And
it's a Griffin, thank you.
A Griffin. And then Saab, and put the key in the middle and in
Boom,
the center console.
Saab.
And then call it a Saab. And that's what GM's about. GM's about, we have 75 brands, but we make 6 cars.
Yeah. And the engineers at Saab, as I can only respect the hell out of them for this, looked at him and said, yes, this is what we're going to do. We'll talk to you in a couple of years. And they came back and they were like, what'd you do? They said, we made your car a little different.
Saab stuck up for themselves a little bit and said, the cars you make are crap, which is true. And
we make them better.
We want to make it safer and better and, whatever. But you could definitely tell that this thing's starting to get a little more, the old Saabs definitely they were on their own.
Oh, yeah.
There was nothing like a Saab.
They had the Vigans and they had the center key. I mean, they were just wackadoo. And this one, it's starting to get a little more beige.
It's getting a little beige, and it definitely shows through on this one. You're right.
Yeah. I did like the, the stat, and I've heard this a few times, in congested or polluted cities that as they're driving along, they're cleaning the air. I thought that was the first time I'm hearing it on this particular series, but I'd heard that before.
You're just going to, hang on. You're just going to glaze over the fact that Richard Hammond on, I guess, British national television said, in heavily polluted cities like Los Angeles or Denver,
I mean, I've been in Denver in the winter, and I agree. Now, given that's just the winter, and it's just on a particularly heavy inversion time, I don't know that they're on the same playing field with LA. But man, it's been driving off the 70 corridor into Denver in January. You're like, ugh, I don't want to be in that.
I watched this segment like 6 times, this little section, to see if he was saying it. Like, did he say Dover? Is he saying some other city? He says
It's got a very clever engine. For instance, if you drive it through really heavily polluted cities, LA, Denver, places like
Birmingham.
that. Yeah, Birmingham as well.
Denless?
Douglas.
Denhamy?
I'm looking at a list. Denver is not in the top 10 for most polluted cities in the U.S. All of them are in California, honestly, except for, funnily enough, Salt Lake City.
Yeah, that's the same kind of thing where you get what happens is it just socks up against the mountains and you just get a bucket of funk over the city.
Bucket of funk.
That's a good band name.
That's a great band name. There's got to be a band name, Bucket of Funk.
So yeah, I agree. Hearing that, I was like, I don't know if I agree with those. Putting those two there.
There's Bucket Funk, and there's Funk Bucket. Hang on. There's a Urban Dictionary, Bucket Funk.
Oh, I don't know if you want to read that.
Funk Bucket, the irresistible urge to get down and party. I seriously want to funk bucket right now. That was it. That was a little more PG than I expected.
Yeah.
So yes, going back to what you said is that I guess I've heard it as well, maybe from the Top Gear guys, is that the catalytic converters in this car are good enough that it pulls crap out of the air as it goes through the combustion cycle.
Yeah.
In Denver,
I don't think it'd work.
But
yeah. Okay. Fair enough. That's about it. I mean, it's a Saab. It's a safe car. I've owned 2. I've been hit in 1, and I survived. And that's about all I got.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't do a lap in it. They kind of just drove around and talked about.
It really would have been interesting to see what that 9.3 did on the course. I mean, interesting from a purely numeric perspective to see okay, this is what the car that I see driving to work every day does. But
yeah, I bet this would have ranked really high in the Top Gear Rearview Power rankings because it's cheap.
Yeah.
It probably would have done okay, and we both like it. So
yeah, but alas, nope.
Nothing. On to the news.
On to the news. This was another one where I was like, I have very few notes and I'm not recalling a lot. I know this is another one where Jeremy's accents were just on point for America. They were talking about the crash test, which I did find kind of interesting.
Yeah, the Euro NCAP, which I think comes up quite a bit in the future.
Mm-hmm.
About car testing, when they go test the I-hammer Eagle head thrust. They talk about the Euro NCAP testing responsibilities. But there really wasn't much. They talk about the Daihatsu Koppen.
Yep, Koppen, yep.
Kloppen. And then they talk about the SL55 AMG K8, which is the what is it?
The Brabus, yeah.
It's the Brabus version of the SL55 AMG. So
bonus 50 horsepower.
It comes out as an SL55, then it goes to AMG, and then it goes the Brabus, and then it gets the khaki pants, and then it goes on. Goes on Top Gear. So it looked like it was just a style pack, though. I don't know how much they did to it.
They said 50 horsepower.
Oh, okay, 50 horsepower. All right, so
yeah, so it's something.
Just under 500, just under 550.
But that is a good point that it's it does get the double treatment. I was thinking it's like Dynan or it's some of those other tuner houses, but it's not. It's 2 tuner houses.
Yeah, no, AMG AMG only does stuff for Mercedes, right?
God, I feel
maybe race stuff.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like going to a BMW M3 by Hennessy.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that because BMW M tuning is all in house. It's
AMG's
like a Dynan
M3. AMG's not in house to Mercedes.
I don't know. I want to say 50.
I always view those as the exact same thing.
I think they're pretty in house. So I guess it would be pretty similar then to a Dynan M3. You have your in house at least in-house tuning, and then you send it out for the next bump up, like Alpina or something.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that's about it that I had for the news. I don't recall anything of note in this one. It was a little on the bland side. because they were talking. I mean, the whole theme is environmentalism, and
super boring.
yes.
Speaking of environmentalism, Jeff, let's talk about diesels and hybrids.
Richard Burns came back, and they burned his ass again by like showing him on screen for 4 seconds, and then
Richard Burns, man, he's a world championship race car driver going on Top Gear, which is probably the most popular car show in the world, even then. And they just lay into him every single time. Just give him the
poor
crap.
guy.
Surprised they didn't make him stand outside while that thing went around the rain.
I know.
They talk a bit about diesels.
Yeah.
They show
specifically.
us,
the supercar, sort of.
Peugeot, or as they say, the Peugeot RC diesel sports car.
Yep.
They run it, obviously, around the Top Gear track, but they don't give us a time, so we don't know how fast it was, so it must not have been very fast.
Well, he did give a 0 to 60 time. Do you recall what that was?
I do not know. What was it?
6.5 seconds.
Oh, that's not very good.
No, I have a Ford Flex in my garage that'll do it in 5.7. So, not impressive.
Well, is it a Ford Flex driven by Richard Burns? Because he probably couldn't do it in 5.7.
he's probably still waiting for his attention on the show. Poor guy.
Well, they go from this Peugeot RC back to the cool wall, but only briefly, and only to demote everything that's ever made a diesel.
Have you owned a diesel?
No. I've definitely driven quite a few.
How many I've had 3, I believe. Yes, I have. Yeah, 2 7.3s and a 5.9. But I've had them in very large vehicles,
like
ranging from an excursion, which is the largest SUV ever made, to a school bus. So,
which is the smallest bus ever made.
No, it's not. It's not a microbus. It's quite big. My neighbors will tell you all about it. But so I don't know. I've never driven one in any kind. I know that there are BMW diesels that are not slow.
In the UK, a diesel is just another engine that you get, and it's just a normal engine. It's not. Yeah. It's just made the same. It's not meant to be like a Caterpillar engine, like it is here in the US.
Yeah, I remember, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in the future. When they had the diesel, I guess it was the fuel efficiency challenge, where they had, I think it was an A8 versus a Legacy versus a VW Polo when it was, this is like Series 15 or so. But they just seem like normal cars, but then you see the mileage, the fuel mileage, and it's like, well, that is astonishing. I don't know why they didn't catch on in America.
I really don't know either. That's a good question. Why didn't... I guess maybe because gasoline was so cheap for so long that we didn't... I think it's pretty obvious that we didn't give a crap about economics when it came to how low your fuel mileage was in your car, or your gas mileage was in your car. And that made more of a difference in Europe and the UK because they just taxed it more, and so gas is a lot more expensive. Gas is just a lot more expensive over there. So that's why small cars, small engines, and diesels all prevail.
True, I'll give you that. It's a bigger part of your monthly bill.
In the 60s and 70s, when the UK was going down in size, the US was trying to put 550 horsepower in a 2-door, Corvair.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, so it didn't
Single-digit fuel mileage? Who cares?
Who cares? It's America. It costs 12 cents a gallon.
Race me, bro.
Just don't even try it, bro.
The cool wall, brief stint there. I believe he properly called it the cool wall. But
he called it the cool wall this time, yes.
Yeah, his only purpose there was to be like, diesels suck, push them all down. And then they move on to electric, and they had the Ford Think. And I was like, that's a legit, I've never heard of that car.
That was a throwback to something I've never seen. It looks almost exactly like one of the Top Gear's most hated cars, the G-Wiz. It looks a lot like it. So I wonder if that technology was developed by a company that was financed by Ford, and then the thing they produced ended up being a Ford, or if Ford produced it and then killed it or whatever, and some other company bought that, because it looks a lot like a G-Wiz. It's bigger, but the headlights look exactly the same. Yeah,
it was interesting. They were again ragging on it, and it's kind of like they don't at that point. I mean, the technology wasn't there, but it's like the beauty of electric motors is just like torque right there, all the torque right there, and that's what you see in the Teslas now, and how they have like you can go 0 to 60 in like 2.6 seconds because it's just a rocket ship, and
All the torque, all the time.
Yeah, it obviously was not quite ready yet, so that's they will change their tune on that.
Yeah, they made another fat joke. I think this is one fat joke per episode for Jason Daw.
Yep, poor guy.
And
let's
they made him out there.
Shame him out of the show.
They made him go drag race an electric car, and that was funny because he's fat.
Poor
guy.
Jason Daw.
Poor Jason. I wish his segments didn't suck so bad. Another thing to bring up about the plug-in cars. Jeremy calls extension cords flexes. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Like a flex for an
I
extension
have
cord?
not. Again, a flex is something in my garage, but no, brand new.
I've never I had to rewind a couple times again, like the Denver bull from earlier. The Ford Flex guy did. He kept saying that there'd be flexes everywhere because you can't park next to your house in the UK.
Yeah,
which is true. You can never park next to where you live. And if you do, it's like winning the damn lottery. But I've never heard flexes before, and I just looked it up, and someone says, is there a difference between power cord, cable, lead, or anything like that? And this guy goes, I don't think so. I use flex myself, but I'm British English. It's like, okay, watch out.
I guess that's what you say.
And so, this is 2002. The Prius has been out for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, it's been out for a bit. It was the first gen, which is what they showed.
Yeah, the very first gen, and they're talking about it. They're talking about all the celebrities that have it. Obviously, Leonardo DiCaprio is probably one of the most famous people. He bought one right away. Huge environmentalist. But they talk about how it's not inspiring. Electric cars don't excite people the same way that apparently super expensive hypercars do. And so, as Jeff mentioned earlier, Mr. Jason Daw went to a school of elementary school aged kids.
I want to talk about the Prius first because they didn't bring a Prius to the school, did they? Oh, the Prius is just like I mean that given I was a first gen, but like the Prius, I think as an engineer, I respect, and I'm sure they will bring it back more in the future. But like that was the first legitimate hybrid, and those things are bulletproof and they get really good mileage. I had a boss when I was at John Deere who drove one like a goddamn maniac.
Like Will Ferrell and the other guys.
Yeah, just foot to the floor, like go until you have to stop, and he would still get like mid 40s in that thing, miles per gallon. And it's just, I mean, I understand they're beige, they're whatever. I watched a YouTube video today about buying up a used one with a dead battery pack. You can basically buy refurbished battery packs and swap them yourself in a few hours. It costs about $1,000, but you can bring back like a dead Prius for nothing. And it's just like, it's an appliance of a car. But as they're kind of coming to like the dirt cheap, like the Craigslist kind of budget that I have, I might be like, I don't know, maybe that's not a bad idea.
Well, I mean, we can talk about the Prius as much as we want, but it was really the first viable hybrid / any sort of electric car.
For sure. Toyota took a risk and got a huge head start on the market.
And a huge payoff, too.
Oh, yeah. I think I got to imagine whoever was like, approve that one, they got some high fives.
Because it is everywhere now. It was everywhere then. Everyone wanted to buy one because it was an actual usable hybrid or electric car. And that's, I guess, one thing to talk about maybe when we go a little bit more into hybrid cars in the future, or maybe we can just do it right here, is I'm surprised there's not more of a difference US to UK in the viability of electric cars. I'm surprised that there's not more electric cars in Europe / the UK than there is here, like on a drastic scale, because of how little you actually have to drive in the UK versus how much you have to drive here in the United States.
Yeah.
And it's also surprising me that Teslas are actually making it work over here. They put so much money into infrastructure of getting their supercharged stations across the country and stuff like that, and keeping them in the centers where and actually making it be able to charge at home appropriate or properly. But why isn't this something that's just everywhere in the UK? Why didn't the Prius, as they say. I can't get it out of my head. The Prius just explode over there. Did it? I'm not sure it did.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea on the UK market. It seems like it got foothold. I mean, it was not like something that came and went. Like it's, but I still understand what you're saying, especially with like something you had to plug. I mean, you don't have to plug this in, and that's the beauty of it. Is it kind of is its own self-contained thing, and it has its own backup, generator essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why it really took off here, is because you could go as far as you could normally on a normal car.
Yeah, there were no range limitations.
It was still an electric car when it made the most sense.
Yep.
It's a well-engineered car, that's for sure. You said that right. But I'm just kind of surprised that it wasn't, just this revolution in the UK. Same way that, like, the original Mini was in the UK, where it just changed everything. Cars didn't look like that, and then after that, they all tried to look like that.
Yeah.
And, why aren't all of the cars in the UK half hybrids?
Yeah, I agree. It has its own little niche thing too here. Then I've talked this through with some other people, but I mean, the Prius has a look, and like if you look at the Insight that followed it, it also had that kind of similar look where they didn't really look like a lot of other things on the road. And some of the major manufacturers made hybrid versions of standard cars. You look like even Toyota, they have like a Highlander hybrid and a Camry hybrid, and there's like the Accord hybrid and all these, and they took off a decent amount, but nothing like the Prius. Like I think there was some. I mean, it's a lot of the celebrities, I'm sure, were kind of, it's obvious. It made a very visual statement. Like you see that, there's no mistaking that for anything but a Prius. So they had their own kind of niche there. And I think it was by looking like something that was not a normal car.
Maybe it's the Beats by Dre effect.
It very well could be.
But in this case, actually had something to deliver behind it.
Some technology to back up,
as
opposed to just like weights.
Beats by Dre understands why they're selling headphones. They're selling headphones because your favorite athlete / music artist wears their headphones. Like, this basketball player or this football player, or this baseball player, they wear Beats by Dre, so I am going to too. I don't care that they cost $300. I don't care that they sound worse than iPod headphones. I don't know if they do or not. But it's that kind of thing.
Pretty terrible.
Is because Cameron Diaz, because Leo DiCaprio, and all those other people that he listed owned one, and these are people that you usually see driving Ferraris or Maseratis or just uber extravagant, cool cars. All of a sudden, the Prius is cool too.
And it's affordable. So, bam.
Marketing,
sell them all.
A marketing coup is what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, it's interesting to see him. I mean, they didn't write it off. This was kind of their, like, quote unquote, like, nice middle ground.
Yeah, this was the compromise that worked. It was a
Which
battery
really was.
when you wanted it, and a gasoline engine when you wanted it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now that did kind of awkwardly meander into, getting the opinion of children on supercars.
I guess the point of this segment, they took Jason Daw to an elementary school or a grammar school, and they took all the kids out of a couple of classes out to the parking lot, and there were a bunch of supercars out there.
Yeah.
And I guess the point that they were trying to make is that supercars are cool. That's it. I think that's it, right?
I think it is, I guess. I mean, it was, all in all, I didn't hate the segment. It was just kind of there, but
yeah, it was just kind of there. So they brought these kids out to look at a Ferrari 360, a Pagani Zonda, which we've seen previously, the Skyline R34, which we've seen previously, the TVR Tuscan. Was that the one that they broke the speed camera with, or was it a different TVR?
It was.
Okay. So the TVR Tuscan, which they beat the speed camera with, going like 170 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. And then they brought in a ringer at the end, which was the Lamborghini Countach.
Which is just cheating.
It's kind of cheating. I had a poster of a Countach.
Yeah.
Like that exact car. Not black. Mine was red, but obviously.
Duh. And so that was the only way it wasn't cheating, is they brought a black one, not a red one.
Not a red one?
With not red with the phone dial gold wheels.
Or a supermodel on the hood.
I mean, that's the double ringer. But then
and so what they did is they showed these kids these cars and then essentially shamed them for not knowing how much they cost, and then trying to figure out
children.
how many of their parents' houses these cost. You know how many houses this costs? It costs 3 of your cheap little houses, you little
Unsurprisingly, the R34 lost because it's kind of a tame looking car. I love it. I think it's a very nice looking car that is not like, I mean, you put an R34 next to a Zonda and it's like, no, these are different animals. The surprise, I gotta say, well, I guess it's not a surprise. The Zonda comes in second behind the Countach. But I was like, man, the Zonda is like the modern day Countach. That is the poster car. The like, holy God, that's a crazy looking car. That thing looks like a spaceship.
It is. It definitely is. The Countach or maybe a Koenigsegg or something like that. But
yeah,
the Zonda is the poster car. And that's what it was made to be. It's exactly what it was made to be. Yeah. I mean, if you've seen the interiors or whatever of them, it's just made to flash. But it's also pretty fast.
Yeah, for sure.
So I had a question. Now, money not being a problem, I think we would probably both take a Zonda on this.
All day long. Yeah? All day long.
But once you take into account how much a Zonda costs, like, what do you think the one of these cars would be the top on our Top Gear Rearview Power Rankings?
I think it might differ.
Okay. I don't know. What do you
I mean, I take the R34.
What do you think I would take?
I don't know. That's the thing. I'm not sure.
You think it differs. You think it differs. What do you think I would take?
I think you might take the Tuscan, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I hate TVRs. No, I take.
Yeah, I think you might take the Countach.
I think TVRs don't look that great. Okay. I take the R34 all day long. I think I might take an R34 over a Zonda just because it makes more sense. And Lord, tell me the insurance group is lower.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But yeah, the R34 I think is probably the best car out of all of those. And I mean, what it costs? You could buy one for $40,000. Jason Daw told me I could buy one for £40,000, and the Zonda is £310,000.
It's only 8 times as much, Brady.
So we talked.
So you take the Zonda and you sell it, and you buy 8 R34s.
Oh man, you got me there.
Boom.
Would Roasted. You take 8 R34s or 1 Zonda? I think I'd take 8 R34s.
I'd probably take 4 R34s and a Tuscan or something.
I just don't like TVRs, man.
They got a look about them.
They got a look about them. That's exactly right. Apparently they can do 170. That's pretty cool,
though. Yeah, I think they can do over 200. That's what he said.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Why didn't they do 200 when they were beating the speed camera?
Because, I mean, you don't want to be a dick about it. Just do it enough to make your point.
Yeah.
All right. Now I have a something in here, and I can't remember specifically what the segment was, but he broke out some graphs talking about CO2 emissions. Do you recall this segment at all? It was funny because he just had like a poster board. It was like this is like an 8th grade science project.
Well, that's BBC classic right there is what that is.
Okay, fair enough. But they were talking about like ways to make your cars cleaner, and they had a Bristol, which I'm still not 100% sure what that was. That was a car I was not familiar with, that they converted to propane, and they said you can convert any gas car to propane for 1,500 quid.
That's right. They were talking about propane. They're giving that as an alternative to gasoline or hybrids or electric or whatever. That's right.
Which, yeah, I mean, I guess. There was. We were looking for a car for my nephew, and they had a Civic that ran on. No, it was CNG. It was natural gas, so not propane, but similar. But he was like, "There's one filling station in town, so don't go too far."
Yeah.
Propane, I gotta imagine, is way easier. You just gotta stop by a U-Haul, I guess. I wonder what the mileage would be.
Get a couple tanks from the Home Depot.
Chuck them in the trunk, hook them up, go to go.
Go to go.
I think that's meant to be good to go. PBR's catching up with me.
Mm-hmm.
But they were talking about
PBR.
Well, yeah, the first one was I had Disco Ninja. I can't follow that up with just anything.
So you follow it up with PBR.
I'm the classiest of Americans.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so they had this. So they had the graph kind of breaking out the CO2 emissions, and I think their first one, which is kind of funny, is it was like 95% is from the environment. And it was like, yeah, that's because of plants, or not plants, but like various other things. I guess plants take CO2 in, but
plants are the opposite of what's doing that. You're correct.
True. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't think that's surprising. But then the thing that he said he was talking about, pointed out, like, the only thing we do with cars is this 13%, and like it clearly stated 13% gas transportation, and above that 6% more diesel transportation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why are you leaving that part out? It's 19%.
Because they're uncool, Jeff. They're down on the uncool section of the cool
So
wall.
if they're uncool, they don't count.
They don't count.
Yeah. That's about all I had. It was a funny poster board, and he was like ranting about it. Really just in the theme of this green episode, which is kind of following that theme, I guess. Does transition nicely into the Elise, though, which is a legitimately green supercar. Not supercar, but at least sports car.
Yeah, I would agree. Are you saying because the color of the car that he tests is green?
No, I mean, that's double, but it's
okay, because it is an actual green car.
I mean, it's a 1.8 liter, the 111S, I think 156 horsepower, but I gotta imagine those things get phenomenal mileage for what they are.
I'm sure they do.
That's the same size as the engine in a Miata, and like my Miata rarely drop below 30. So
yeah, even when you was racing it,
it often dropped below 30. but that was because I drove it like an a-hole. So yeah.
So yeah, this is the power lap of the episode, and I guess Lotus is a storied manufacturer in the UK. So this is their kind of newer-ish foray into. They had the Esprit, and now they have the Elise, kind of in recent memory in 2002.
This is the second gen Elise.
Okay, so there's an Elise before this. So this is the updated version.
Uh-huh.
And the Elise, I guess, has that's right. The previous version was he noted that it was twitchy, and Lotus as a manufacturer in regards to this, like, took away a ton of grip and reduced the tire size in the front. Like, some people thought the Elise was twitchy, so we're gonna make it completely undrivable.
No, so I understand, and I remember this specifically from Vehicle Dynamics, why. So they lowered, or they basically skinnied up the front tires.
Yeah, they made the front tires less grippy by making them smaller.
Yeah, which leads to understeer, and understeer is the default for a company. And the guy that they brought in, the chassis engineer, explained it very well. He said, we're selling 3,000 cars a year. We need to make it for all drivers. Mm-hmm. And that is really the mass logic. Like, if you, we were in this class together, I believe, if you recall, they said, understeer. Oh, I mean, the analogy that I've always heard is understeer means you see the car or see the tree that you're going to crash into, and oversteer means you don't. So it's a lot easier to at least kind of understand what's going wrong with understeer and somewhat correct for it. Whereas oversteer, you're just spinning out of control. So as from the consumer, protection standpoint, totally understand why they did that.
Who are they really shooting for in this market, though?
I don't know. 3,000 jag bags. That's all I know.
I mean, so I guess this would be a competitor for the Z4, right?
I think it's a little on the cheaper side than that.
Yeah, I think it. The Z4 was
30,000 pounds.
30,000, and this one was like 25.
26. That's what I got. I didn't realize they were so cheap. I thought they were more.
That's pretty close to competitor. It's probably. I mean, what they said, the Z4 was a competitor of the TT and the Boxster. Those are probably both similarly or more expensive. So this is even cheaper than all of those. So this is.
I mean, yeah, you get this in a used Golf.
I mean, I guess this is probably an MX-5 competitor then.
Oh, no, more than that. No, it's not that cheap.
Okay, not cheap enough. Okay.
MX-5 would probably be in like the low teens.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, MX-5s were cheap, man.
Okay, so it's a Z4 competitor. So that's, I guess, the market they're shooting for. But if an average consumer who's going to worry about too much grip from the front end and oversteer and want to get it now that it has understeer, they're just going to buy a Z4. They're not going to go back and buy a Lotus because they've reduced the grip and made it understeer more. The people who buy a Lotus, and we've talked about the TVRs earlier in this episode, the same people who buy TVRs. They're buying them because, despite that there's other things on the market, they like that it's a British car. You know, you don't agree?
I think it's more. I mean, so you put it next to a Z4. I think the Lotus is much less usable. I think it is a much more raw car. I think it's.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You've been in an Esprit, right? Sort of, because it's small and you're not small.
I have driven in an Esprit.
There you go. Okay.
Very difficultly.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think we are the size of Lotus, Loti. But I mean, as I understand, like you step over the door sill, which then turns into your armrest when you're sitting in it. Like there is barely any fabric on the seats. They're made to go fast because they weigh nothing. In this case, 760 kilograms, which is just under 1,700 pounds.
Yeah, which
that's what my Exocet weighs, and it doesn't have any body.
I think that's what we're making the same point here, is changing the steering dynamics on the front end is not going to get you Z4 customers.
I agree. I
you
think
should
it's
put
more
carpet and a stereo and air conditioning.
Yeah,
because that's what a Z4 has.
They did that, but I think that's kind of, maybe they're starting to get a little market share, and mostly I think they're hedging their bets that like we gotta really just protect the company, and like we gotta, if they're gonna crash, we gotta make them aware of that fact.
We gotta sell some damn cars, guys. I don't care if it has less grip. We gotta sell some cars, or you're gonna be out of a job.
Well, if you recall, all you got to do is ask nicely, and apparently they'll give you the wider front tires, and then it's all gravy.
Yeah, make everyone at Lotus happy. Oh, thank God he wants the wider tires.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing. So the old adage for Lotus doesn't apply as much here because they're just starting to get in the creature comforts, but it's simplify and add lightness, and that's what they've always done. But now they're trying to punch in the upper brackets where their price is. And so they have to put in, seats with upholstery and working windshield wipers and crap like that.
But those are highfalutin options, sir.
What that means is that it did a 134.9 in the wet.
Yeah,
lap.
They called it a 135, so bump it to a 131, roughly.
I'm keeping the decimal because they go to the decimal later, so I'm going a 134.9.
Fair enough.
That's what I've written in this. So that's a wet lap. So, on our Top Gear Rearview power rankings, Jeff, what would you say is your ranking for a Lotus Esprit 1.1 or 1.8 liter? I'd
give this guy a 7.
You'd give it a 7?
Oh, man. I want one so bad. I think I might fit.
You might fit. Yeah, well, I mean, Clarkson fit in this one, so you probably fit in that one as well.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest Lotus fan. I'm not the biggest
I understand.
Elise fan. I
take an Exige myself, but
I would take an Exige as well, but I give it a 4.
Ooh,
I'm hitting it hard.
Okay.
That being said, it's a cheap car and it goes pretty fast.
Yeah.
So it moves into the 5th position, which we just gave to the SL55 AMG last episode.
Get out of here, Merc.
It is now in 6th place. So it has got a score of 104.1. It is just ahead of the SL55 AMG and just behind the Focus RS Mark I, which seems to be a difficult one to supplant. Ever since it came on in episode 2, we haven't had one go past it.
All right. That sounds about right.
I would take an RS over a Lotus Elise, and I'd probably take an Elise over an SL55, given money constraints.
For sure. That's what I mean, you can buy 4 Elises for SL55, maybe 3. But
26,000 pounds, that really helps it score a lot.
That is cheap.
And that being said, because it was wet, it was faster than an M3, and it's cheaper than an M3. Would you take this or an M3?
Oh, that's a tough one. Probably this.
I'd probably take an M3, and that shows in our scores. I think the metric is working, Jeff. I think our scores are working. I'm happy with it.
Glad to hear it.
We'll be able to post those up online. You'll be able to see them.
All right. So on to our guest for the episode, Mr. Rick Parfitt. This was another one that I was like, who now?
Rick Parfitt. I did not know who this person was. I hope.
Well, he was. I mean, he was in Status Quo.
He was in a band called Status Quo,
which I don't know.
I looked up, and I have to pull up their Wikipedia page again because there was kind of not really that much to it. But
didn't ring any bells.
They've been popular for a long time in the UK.
Okay.
I guess, I mean, they're not like the Rolling Stones. They're not like this mega worldwide band, but they're not like a one-hit wonder. So they came out into the world in the 60s as like a psychedelic. It's 1962 is when Status Quo was founded, and they are still going to this day. Rick Parfitt was like the guitarist for a long time with them.
Yeah.
For more than... Well, I mean, we're looking at 40 years. Rick Parfitt was a guitarist with them from 66 to 2016. But they're a very successful band. We'll call it successful. They have a lot of singles that made it to the chart. I don't know if they ever topped the charts. They got close. They've had over 60 chart hits in the UK. In the UK, the charts are kind of a big thing. I don't know if it's because the main radio stations are the BBC, so they get to choose what's important or not. The charts are a pretty big thing. More than any other band.
Wow.
So I guess you might call them critically the most successful band ever in the UK.
Possibly, yeah. Okay.
And they've had 22 reach a top 10 in the singles chart.
Wow. That's sizable.
Why haven't we heard of them?
They've only had one top 40 hit in the U.S., which is Pictures of Matchstick Men, and I do not recall that song at all.
Well, it's the 1968 one, and did you listen to it at all?
I did not.
It sounds familiar.
Okay.
That's the best I can do. It sounds familiar. And we'll play a quick section. So, I mean, it's mildly familiar. But that being said, I'd never heard of him before this.
Yeah, totally new name to me. I was a little bummed at the interview. Like, they were talking through stuff, and he said, yeah, he liked Porsches because he had a really hot Mini, and one just blew his doors off. And he's had 10 to 11, and that's all he said. I was like, 10 to 11 what? Elaborate. Tell me more.
Well, I mean, at the time, I suppose they were still like a touring group, and it kind of seems like something that maybe like Jeremy liked Status Quo, so that's why they got him on.
I guess.
But he talked about he had a really bad crash. He was driving his Porsche, and he fell asleep at the wheel on the M3 going 120, and then woke up in his car, and it wasn't on the M3 anymore. But this is this guy, Rick Parfitt, he's kind of the quintessential rocker kind of guy. Looking at his quick page, he's had like 3 heart attacks.
Yeah.
He's had a bunch of overdose scares. That sort of thing. His drugs, smoking, and alcohol have just caught up to him at this point. I mean, he's been a rock star since 1966.
It's gotta be a hard life.
It catches up to you. Just think of what Keith Richards looked like these days. Yeah. And in 2002, what did Keith Richards look like? He probably looked a little worse than Rick Parfitt did.
True.
He looked pretty good in the interview, I have to say. He had some nice hair, I suppose.
Yeah.
They didn't really. You're right. They didn't really go into the cars at all.
It was a little bit of a bummer because I'm a Porsche fan and I would like to hear more. But
I just ordered 12 Porsches. Porsche what? I don't know. Cars.
Porsches. With the steering wheels and buttons.
One thing I'd point out though, he did do the lap in they didn't show his face like they usually do, and it was because, or this is my theory, it was because he showed up to the track day in his own equipment. He brought his own stuff.
Okay.
He had his own gloves, and he had his own helmet. And on his helmet, it had his son's name, and his son, Rick Parfitt Jr., is a...
he's a racer.
He's a race car driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had his son's helmet. So he showed up in all this stuff to the point where I thought that maybe it was his son driving, because they didn't show his face at all.
Yeah, I mean, if he was a race car driver, he sucked because he didn't do as good as Clarkson.
That's true.
Yeah.
It was a dry lap, the first one we've had in a while, and he did a 152, so he was 2 seconds slower than Clarkson.
Yeah. So not anything embarrassing, but not anything particularly impressive.
But yeah, there's not a lot of car stuff in this interview. I like it when they talk about their car history, and not a lot going on here. Yeah. I think they ease into it over the years here, but right now it's
little quiet.
Little generic interview.
Following a little bit of a bummer trend, Mr. Parfitt also died within the last year. He died on Christmas Eve of 2016.
He did. After a long, hard rock star life.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll wear on you, as you said.
They said at one point he was paying $1,000 a week in cocaine and $500 a week in vodka. I don't know which is more impressive.
The vodka.
$500 of vodka. I mean, I guess you could buy like 100. You could buy.
You're not going to be buying 100 if you're drinking that much vodka. You're maybe buying a $20 bottle of vodka.
I mean, when you're super rich,
Christ.
maybe you are dropping back like 100 pounds a bottle or something like that.
Wow.
That's a lot of vodka. Well, rest in peace, Mr. Parfitt. And rest in peace from the last episode, TPT. I apologize, I didn't say that.
All right, on to the kind of interesting segment that I honestly enjoyed. The
I'm going to, first of all,
okay.
I'm going to say completely rigged segment, but proceed.
Yeah, completely rigged. I totally agree. But fastest religious leader figure, something.
They've been talking about this for a while now.
A bit, yeah.
They actually pleaded to the viewer audience, if you know a rabbi, let us know. And they went out and got the worst driving rabbi known to man.
Oh, yes.
But they
had a Hare Krishna, they had a Buddhist, they had a bishop.
Church of England bishop, and then a Church of England reverend, and then they had a Catholic priest.
Yes.
So they had 5 religions, 6 people, and they sent them around in not the reasonably priced car.
No, I was kind of surprised. That was a pro-drive STI. That car is not messing around.
It's probably not that easy to drive either.
No, so I'm guessing that would have that time maybe been a 2.5 liter. Yeah, maybe a 2 liter, but like with a big turbo on it. So like you got to know what you're doing because that when the power hits, it like hits surprisingly. So
yeah, I mean probably like a race clutch in it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like
that's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
No, you'll shatter the bejesus out of that thing.
Yeah, so they're racing around the track. They said it had dried up. I'm going to call it mildly moist.
I'd give you that. Damp.
I'd call it damp, yeah. They spend a lot of time on this segment. They show everyone's lap.
They do, yeah.
It's not like the F1 car manufacturers where it's a bunch of preamble and then like, oh yeah, here's the times. They show everyone's lap, and I guess we'll just go right into the results. One thing I should say before we share the results, Jeff, the minister from the Church of England, not the bishop, but the minister from Church of England is a hobbyist race car driver.
Yeah, for Revelation Racing.
So he's got started his own thing or is a very active member in Revelation Racing, which is I guess a Church of England kind of backed racing thing.
Racing for Jeebus.
Yeah. But he races, he's like, not very much, like 4 times a year. It's like, okay, it seems like a hell of a lot, you know?
Yeah, it's more than I race.
I don't do
I have
cocaine.
a race car.
I just do cocaine 4 times a year. No, you do cocaine. You're a race car driver. So
a quarterly cocaine bump.
So we don't get a time for him, but
I know it's a
spoiler alert. He wins.
Yeah, unsurprisingly.
Watch out!
Bring in a ringer. Ringer wins.
Surprisingly, so they did go through when they introduced the rabbi earlier. They went through all of his crashes. Apparently, this rabbi can't drive without crashing into something. But he is not the slowest driver.
Amazingly. He's still crashed. Let's be real here.
So the Hare Krishna and the rabbi barely, I guess they had time, so they made it around the track. So they came back onto the road from off of the road, and
they both spun it, and it took about a 10-second recovery time.
So who was it? The Hare Krishna or the rabbi that spun it on the follow through?
I believe that was a Krishna. Maybe both, actually.
No, one of them spun it on the second to last corner. One of them spun it on the...
Okay, yeah. I don't recall who was who. But either way, they both spun, and they were a second apart at the back of the pack with a 156 and a 155.
That's right. Coming in 4th was the Buddhist.
The Buddhist.
With, presumably run-of-the-mill 145. Just kind of, he made it, didn't stop, didn't spin, but didn't go very fast.
Nope. The Bishop came in third place, the bronze medal with a 142. Now they showed after the fact that he broke the car.
He went off the track and ran into a sign, not a racetrack sign, but the airport sign.
Come on, dude.
You just ran right into it. You gotta turn the wheel or something, man.
No, that sign's a coming. I guess that's my day.
It was funny, like Jeremy threw the piece of bodywork that had fallen off onto the hood of the car, and he's like, "Which one of you did it?" And they all looked sheepish. And then the bishop like raised his hand. I'm like, "What if they all just lied?" You know?
Yeah. That guy. Yeah.
Forgive me, Father, I have sinned. What'd you do? I lied on Top Gear. Oh, you're the one who crashed the car?
They had video evidence, but yeah, that was like an under tray, so that could have happened any time it went off the track.
That's true.
But yeah, the corner damage, that was definitely running into that airport sign.
I mean, it's a big sign.
Yeah, it was not hard to miss, I guess, or easy to miss. I don't know.
And then the Catholic
priest at 140
came in second, and then the Church of England minister came in at 1 minute and I guess
question mark
39 or less.
Yeah.
Because he's a race car driver.
And surprisingly enough, those skills translated to race car driving.
Yeah, who would have thought, man? Who would have thought? I guess that wraps it up for this episode. A pretty quick episode.
Yeah, it was an interesting one with a lot of kind of meandering, but in terms of, they're still finding their way. And I guess an environmentalist episode is in the cards. Or whatever.
I have to say, this is probably the lightest. I'm looking through the episode list. The lightest episode in terms of car stuff.
100%, which is interesting.
Definitely so far.
Yeah, episode 8, it looks like they're about to hit us with a hammer of cars. We messed up, sorry.
So make sure you guys hit subscribe on that podcast, whatever player you choose, or you can find us just on our Podbean website. To get our episode every week, we release Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's 8 a.m. Pacific American time. And please tell your friends about it if you enjoyed it. We enjoy making it for sure. I hope you can tell that. And we hope you guys can enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, we are on YouTube as well. If you want to listen to it in that format, you can hop on there. We got basically transcripts and whatnot. They will subtitle it, so a little easier to follow along if that's your method of choice. And you can also send us any feedback or questions or anything to topgearrearview@gmail.com. And we have a Facebook page as well. That we're manning on a pretty regular basis. We're usually getting posts up about daily. So take a look there. It's usually cross-post, things that we find interesting, videos, links, articles, all sorts of stuff. So take a look. Again, search Top Gear Rearview on Facebook, and you will find us quickly.
That's right. Jeff said you can email us if you have a question or a comment, or you can hit us on the Facebook page as well. We're on that pretty much all day. If we get a notification on there, we'll be able to respond to you there. But thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, and on that note, until next week, talk to you later, buddy.